So, Karen Read will be returning to court this week, and the biggest questions are, will the case be dismissed, and will the trial be delayed?
His girlfriend is now charged.
Because he's dead.
Listen,
Why are you
As I see
lying?
him approach the door, I look down at my phone.
How did you know Colin Albert was in the house?
Who we now
said,
know
I hit him.
that was
I said I hit him.
lie.
It was
You got that right.
by a did and proceeded by a question mark.
Small town, everybody knows everybody.
It's Michael Proctor's sister who really is friends with Julie Albert.
Yes, Baki, we know.
Yes or no? You are a disgrace to your brother, dude. A disgrace. You are a disgrace. I'll say whatever I want. Oh, it showed up for the first time tonight with you guys.
That is outrageous.
You guys.
We are outraged.
Worried about what's going to happen when your kids go to jail.
Sounds like it's the same issue.
No, it's not.
He said, Dad, I think I struck something.
Now, will the case be dismissed? The motions filed last week by her attorneys citing the federal investigation to dismiss the case. They were talking about Odell, and what they needed to prove was that certain evidence was held back from the grand jury, which caused them to indict Karen Read, whereas if different evidence or additional evidence or whatever was presented to the jury, then they would have came to a different conclusion. The only item that they kind of presented that would suit that was the how long to die in cold. Because they're saying, oh, this should have been available to the grand jury for them to look at, and then she wouldn't have been indicted, right? The problem is that version of the software didn't exist at the time. And we can debate all day about whether that search really happened or not. I mean, that's an issue for the trial. But what they needed to prove was that they knew that that came up in the report, and an examiner would have said, you know what, that search probably happened. Most likely they're not going to say, even though that might have been present in the wall file, they're not going to say that search happened at that time, because most people know, and the versions of iOS change over time, the way that things are stored. But the wall files are timestamped when created. So when you open a new tab, timestamps there, it's to hold that tab available for you to continue to use or to reopen. It's not a timestamp of when the latest information was entered into that tab. So that's going to be debated at trial regardless. But that really was the only thing that called into question what was told to the grand jury. Because Michael Proctor possibly having personal conversations regarding Julie Albert, which was like a distant witness, that's not evidence that would have been presented to the grand jury anyway. And the fact that this theory of the cover-up and all that happened much later, maybe he has a very slight conflict, but I think it's a gray line. It's not a hard line, because he didn't have a direct relationship. It was a relationship through a sister, through a friend, whatever. But it was a small town. Everybody knows everybody. And so the problem is that when this first occurred, it was being investigated as a hit and run. Whether he knew the people, the main witnesses, the people in the house, he had never met. So that's a whole different story. And this wasn't being investigated as a beating. None of the first responders, none of the people in the emergency room, the medical examiner, nobody said there was defensive wounds. Nobody says that it was a fight. He had raccoon eyes because it was a skull fracture. And so with that information at the time, Michael Proctor had no conflict. So I don't think the case will be dismissed. Absolutely not. It's going to move forward. Will it be postponed? Now, the feds said that the investigation is still ongoing. So is there more information that could be revealed that would be paramount to the defense or the prosecution? Maybe. But the Fed's letter to the judge said, we only want you to reveal information that will advance the proceedings, that will keep the proceedings moving forward. They didn't say, we want you to halt the process. They didn't say anything about delaying the process. So it doesn't seem like the feds are coming in to save the day for Karen Read. And if you think about it, the way the judge talked to Yannetti saying, oh, well, now I know how this investigation started. He started the investigation. So she kind of knows that it's BS and that things were going to be found. And the fact that so little of importance was found, I mean, the foundational evidence of this case was not challenged. I mean, that's huge for the prosecution. The prosecution didn't want to talk about much because they're just like, let's get to trial, let's clean this up. I mean, using Karen Read's statements on their own is pretty damning. You know, at first she said she had stomach issues, so she just dropped him off to a 3-point turn and left. Then she said she dropped him off in the driveway, he ran up to the house, and then she sat out by the flagpole and waited. Now, the issue with that is that she didn't say that until the phone data came out showing that it would have been in the house, in the range of the front door of the house for like a millisecond, right? So she created that story to kind of back up that data. His phone data really doesn't show him going inside the house. The defense came out in a Rule 17 hearing saying that John O'Keefe's phone data unequivocally shows him going inside the house because he wasn't climbing up 3 flights of stairs and climbing on top of Karen Read's car, right? But if you look at the expert's report, the expert doesn't even say that he climbed stairs after arriving. So they just made that up to create this illusion. And so that's where we're at. He never went inside the house. The feds aren't disputing any of this either. So he never went inside the house. She said, I hit him. Now she's going to go to trial. Those texts that came out between her and Turtle Boy, I think they're pretty damning. But the thing that is going to seal her fate is going to be her own cell phone data, which she was clutching to her chest, trying not to release for over a year. That information is going to be what either convicts her or exonerates her. And the fact that her defense team, revealing as much as they did to the public to persuade public opinion, didn't release any of her cell phone data, tells me that she's guilty as hell. They could have just revealed her phone data to show that she had already left when John O'Keefe was still walking around, right? But they didn't do that. They didn't want her cell phone data out at all. Like, is her cell phone data going to show her, like, going up to the body before she came back with a search party? I mean, that's pretty damning if it does. Or did she turn off her GPS? Or did she turn off her location data? We know that she moved the cars around in the driveway, and where John's car was parked in that video that morning is not where he typically parked. So she moved the cars around, and who knows how long she was plotting for that night. The text message with her and Turtle Boy saying, oh, they knew I would see his body at 4:53 a.m. when I called Jen McCabe. 4:53 a.m., I'm guessing that means that John O'Keefe shared his location with his kids. So she was like, oh shit, he's exactly where I left him. I'm screwed. So at the last minute, Alan Jackson brings up that the independent guy with 3 PhDs says that the injuries are inconsistent with being hit by Karen Read's car. The damage in the car is inconsistent with hitting a body. We don't know if there's a lot more to that sentence and if that's just the piece that he decided to pull out. Because I feel like this should have been like his main point, right? The main thing that he wanted to say. But he chose to say it in the rebuttal so that Lally didn't have time to respond to it. And they've done it to us in the past where they totally tell us that their expert's report says something completely different than what it actually is saying. So could it say it's inconsistent with being hit by a car? Because usually like lower extremities are injured, like broken legs or bruised legs and torso. And whereas in this case, most of the damage was done to John O'Keefe's upper body, which is not consistent with most pedestrian accidents, which is true. We don't know what the details behind everything is. But if the FBI was like, no, he definitely didn't get hit by Karen Read's car, you would think in the letter to the judge, they wouldn't have said, you need to stop this immediately because he was killed some other way, right? Nothing from the FBI said that he was in a fight, nothing about dog bites, no dog DNA, nothing. So without knowing the context of how they were saying it was inconsistent, we don't know. We don't know. It does not mean that he was unequivocally not hit by Karen Read's car. That's not what it says. That was Alan Jackson putting his words, stacking his words onto the statement that said inconsistent. The other big piece is going to be, what was Karen Read doing all night? Was she awake all night? Did she really fall asleep? Like, is her cell phone going to show that she was inactive for a few hours? Maybe she was. Originally, she told them that she went to bed, but then like they found that the bed wasn't made. So then she said, oh, she fell asleep on the couch. And then when she woke up, he wasn't there. Which could be true. She might have stayed on the couch waiting for him to come home. We don't know. We don't know. And then she stormed into the daughter's bedroom at 4:53 a.m., saw his location, called Jen McCabe. So maybe she did fall asleep. Maybe who knows what she called him all those times. She was expecting him to respond, come home, whatever. It does seem that as soon as she called Jen McCabe, saw where he was, because I think he shares his location with his kids, saw that he was exactly where she had hit him or left him, she started panicking, because then she called Kerry Roberts and said, John's dead. What if John's dead? I think he got hit by a plow. And that wouldn't be the first thing that came to my mind. And then the fact that she went and rounded up people to go on a search party looking for John when she already had his location, knew exactly where he was. And then she's on camera seen going to that location and probably looking at the body before she brings back the other girls to the body. And so Kerry Roberts and Jen McCabe both said that Karen Read was hysterical and just letting out screams and freaking out in the car before they even discovered the body. And in the car, she is saying, do you think I could have hit him? Did I hit him? And then as soon as they pull up to the house, she immediately sees him. It's dark, whiteout conditions, there's a nor'easter, high winds. And the girls are just like, where is he? And Karen Read just gets out of the car and runs straight towards his body because she knew exactly where she had hit him. I mean, she might not have vividly remembered it because I think she was 3 sheets to the wind, but it came back to her. If she had dropped him off and he walked up the driveway into the front door, her attention would have been looking towards that part of the property where it's all lit up, not the dark corner where his body was found. All these pieces put together are going to be pretty damning for her. That's why her team is fighting so hard with the federal investigation. And it's coming out now that they are the ones that launched the federal investigation, right? They are the ones that called the feds and said there's some corruption going on here. And then the feds didn't find anything. Except that Proctor O had some personal conversations with his sister regarding one of the witnesses, which still doesn't change the facts of the case. And the idea that these housewives and these teenagers are going to all stick together with, an AFT agent, Boston police, and all these other people are just going to like band together to frame this innocent woman. It's just insane. It's just insane. And people are believing it because Turtle Boy is just a hard advocate, is advocating hard for her. Because he's getting some benefit out of it. And I mean, it might not be a direct benefit because a lot of what I've seen with true crime creators in general are that these conspiracy type things are the big seller. That's what gets you the views. That's what gets you the likes. That's what gets people interested. Just laying out the facts is not as exciting. People don't feel like they're solving a crime. So we're probably going to see some more performative stuff in the motions that her team is filing this week. But the lack of substantive information is pretty telling. I mean, they are doing everything they can to not go to trial. And it looks like this trial is happening. Steve Scanlon, allegedly he said that he had insider information that Brian Albert and Colin Albert beat him inside the house, right? But comes out he doesn't even know who Colin Albert is. So that whole thing was a lie. And they built the entire conspiracy on that. And Turtle Boy, of all people, interviewed Scanlon and his recorded interview got leaked. I think her defense team are probably like, what the hell are you doing? Take that down. Are you an idiot? Because Steve Scanlon has no idea what Turtle Boy's talking about. He doesn't even know who Colin Albert is. He certainly didn't say that there was a beating. in the beginning, all that was said on the news was there was a Boston police officer found outside of this home. And, that's super suspicious without any other information. And then it turns out that it was a police officer party. Even more suspicious. And so then when Karenread was arrested, the people that like that conspiracy stuff were like, kind of disappointed. Like Steve Scanlon was like, I think there's something more to it, right? Because it does sound suspicious. And so he went to Yannetti saying, I'll help you look into this. I'll investigate it, yada, yada, yada. So now we have an army of conspiracy theorists celebrating a murder suspect.